Hello, hello, and welcome to the newest episode of Borderline Podcast Disorder, and welcome to the newest year available, 2025. I hope you had a nice New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, New Year's beginning, and yeah, I've been fairly, doing stuff, not gigging. It's been a some sort of a break, not necessarily willingly, but loads of shows were either cancelled or um, just not many happening because of the whole Christmas and New Year um, period. And it's been nice, It was a good chance to took some time to write and got some new bits which I want to try for one or last or two shows before we leave. I'm going on a short break. Well, break. Yeah, I'm going on a short break to see my family back home, and so next week I'll still post an episode, or like I'll still post an interview, but it will be pre-edited long before anything. So that's going to be exciting, and yeah, I'm looking forward to time off. I'm looking forward to see the family, to spend some time, and to I don't know. I feel like it's really hard at the moment to switch off and not think and not worry about stuff. So we'll see if a change of location is going to help with that, or if it's going to make it worse. I don't know. Um, Yeah, sorry, I'm very disturbed because I'm currently looking at Sarma and Pico playing with some new toys that we got them, and yeah, it's wonderful. And I don't know, I kind of feel sad for taking time away from them, but we just gotta make the most of it. I am gonna leave you with this very short and brief intro, and I'm just going to dive right in on the episode that you've got, which is with Dev. He's a comedian as well. We met in Manchester. I think maybe either just before I moved to London, or maybe not long after I moved here. But I went up north to see my friends and family and do some gigs. But it was really lovely to catch up with him because he's also a doctor, as a day job, and it was quite interesting to get to talk to him and see what's it like, to do something that it's very emotionally draining and time consuming while also finding time to perform comedy. It was pretty interesting, and I hope you enjoy listening to the conversation as much as we've enjoyed, or at least I can talk for myself, as much as I enjoyed the conversation with Dev. And yeah, before I let you enjoy the interview, I'm just gonna say that skills and therapy wise, speaking with my therapist on like a weekly basis has been quite helpful recently. There were no breaks because of the holiday season, so and that was actually quite nice. And I feel like recently, because of the everything that's happening, I guess, like stress, on day to day stuff, um, and other like work things that are going on. It was actually quite nice to be able to speak with her, with my therapist, and to talk about how I manage things, and how I manage to um, accept the situation that I'm in, and try to just make the most of it. And that's something that when I look at now, compared to maybe what I would have done 2 years ago, it's very different. Feels very different anyway. And although it's very tiring, feels good, feels nice. But hey, look, enjoy the episode and or enjoy the conversation with Dev, and I'll say goodbye before we wrap it up for this week. Cool. Okay, so Dev, yes, how's it going?
Hello? It's good, man. How are you?
Yes, hi, how's it going? I'm good, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to do
No,
this. I know
absolutely,
we've
man.
planned it for a while,
I was looking through some of your
but
videos. You're on what,
it's
56, you know. It's a beautiful, beautiful little project you've got going on, and it's a pleasure to be a part of. So thank you.
no, thank you. You're too kind. And well, yeah. I mean, thank you for doing that. We're recording remote, just for everyone listening to get a better, I guess, picture. But so yeah, what are you based these days?
So currently I'm based up north near Manchester. When I was actually born in Bangladesh, and when I came to this country I've pretty much been up north for most of my life. Studied in the south in London, but apart from that it's just been I'm just a northern boy at heart, man.
No way. So when did you move then to UK the first time?
So I was born and brought up in Bangladesh, and then I moved to this country when I was around 8 or 9. My parents were first based in Leeds, and then we moved to Manchester when my dad got a job.
Okay, okay. And then I remember yeah, because you were saying about like you went to uni in London, or was it like
Yeah.
a post university degree that you've done?
No, no. So I was studying. I've only had one degree in my life, and I was studying in London at UCL.
Right. And then when you started doing comedy.
That's right, man. Yeah, it's a bit of a funny story. So for those that don't know, I studied in UCL. I studied in medicine, and in UCL it's a 6-year course. And in my last year, I realized that I was at a point in my life where I was going to finish becoming a med student, and I was going to start becoming a doctor, start going into the world of medicine and healthcare. And there were a couple of things that I really wanted to do, and just get them off my bucket list, if that makes sense. And one of them was comedy. So I just went to this. Well, I just went to this random one-off open mic in a dodgy pub in London. And I remember the room. It had like 3 sofas. It looked like I was gigging in my grandma's basement. There was like a piano in the corner, and I went on, and I was so scared. But I did 5 minutes, and it was amateurish. And then my second gig, I did it at UCL Comedy Club's gig, and I only made one small adjustment, and it ended up going really well. And to be fair, I think that's the thing that keeps me attracted to it. Because I feel like, I don't know about you, Livy, but I feel like for me, comedy is a bit like chasing a high. You're always chasing the last best gig you did.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say and to believe in for sure. It's always about, oh, how do I think I mean I don't know precisely if we share it to this extent, but I feel like to me when it doesn't go well, I must go back out
Mm.
to do one, because I feel like what if like if I die like right after a gig, I don't
Yeah,
want to,
man.
I want to go on a high.
Die on a bomb.
Yeah, but then if it goes well, then I'm like, I still would go. I could do so much better. Or like, oh, I already know what I want to do next. I already know how I can
Yeah,
extend something that I said earlier.
absolutely, man.
So yeah, I can see that very well. By the way, but because most like the biggest audience for the podcast is actually based in the US, and they wouldn't probably, unless they've been in London, they wouldn't have any idea. But just out of curiosity, was it the Kentish, like in Kentish Town, where you did your first gig?
No, man, it was just off Covent Garden. It wasn't in Kentish Town. I've done a gig in Kentish Town. I did the Sunday shtick, if
Yeah,
that's the
because there
one
was
you're
one
thinking
with the
of.
piano. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, so I've done that one as well. That's a very nice room, but yeah, it was another gig near the south of Manchester, just off Covent Garden.
Sorry, south of London. Wait.
Sorry, yeah, you're right. South London. You're right. Yeah.
Okay, so then you obviously you got into doing comedy on the first year, sorry, on the last year of uni while
Hmm.
studying. Because like what was the name of what you is it medicine or
That's right. Yeah, yeah. It's medicine.
right? How did you like what made you want to do medicine? Because again, it's a huge commitment, you know. Besides of obviously committing to even like do comedy as an on and or even just doing comedy part time, you know, to have that alongside
Mm,
medicine,
mm.
it's hard. So yeah, how did you? When did you know that you wanted to go to like to study this at school and to become a doctor?
Well, I think it was near when I was picking for my A-level subjects. To be honest with you, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I really liked the sciences. And I'm a very much a human person. I like human interaction. I like talking and connected with people. And I realized that medicine was a, perfect junction between, of course, the complex science and application of that, but also, the human interaction, talking. And my mentality was I'd go into it because it's very hard. It would make me be a better person. And in the off chance that I finished 5 years and I still didn't want to be a doctor, I'd still have all the hard skills, but also the soft skills, which would, help me in pretty much any other avenue. Like so many of my friends have gone into computing, they've gone into programming, they've gone into medtech, they've even made a lateral move and gone into law, medical law, or even consultant working for, PwC. So I knew even just, having that degree under my belt, it would elevate my perception and it would genuinely make me, much more skilled than I would have been otherwise if I had done something else. So I think that was my mentality. If I enjoy it, fantastic. If I don't, at least I'll have something else worthwhile out of it.
That's a fair point. And then, you know, is this because obviously you with please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just like I based on what I think is the
Mm,
case. But
mm.
you with like medicine, obviously it's a very like it's factual, right? Like you do or like, even the sciences, you know, it's kind of like it's there. You have to learn it and you have to understand it and you have to just again, I feel like there are a lot of what ifs, but it's pretty much a does it work or does it not work sort of case. So now, is that how you perceive perceive? Sorry, I don't know if that's the right word, but is that how you treat comedy as well? In the like when you're writing, are you I guess on the same side, or is that you exploring this side of you that's more like whatever happens happens sort of thing, or yeah, like, or do you treat it basically in the same way that you treat it again studying or working in the medicine field?
I hear what you're saying, man. Honestly, that's a very good question. And to be honest with you, I think I look at comedy in the latter aspect of what you said, in the sense that, whatever happens, happens. For me, medicine is just full of guidelines, it's full of restrictions, it's more of a science. And I look at comedy as an art. Don't get me wrong, I've read some books and I've read up on some techniques and I see how comedians use these techniques to make people laugh and, engage in laughter triggers. But I do look at comedy as a bit of, an art form. It's a form of release for me. And I think that's what I like about it the most. The fact that, it provides me with a moment to just, let go of whatever has happened at work or let go of whatever is to happen and just enjoy a bit more in the moment.
And then when you know when you're doing comedy,
Mm,
when did you also like were you always a creative kid, or did that come across again? Like, how because you were talking about having comedy on a bucket list.
yeah.
What made it be on the bucket list?
I think I was at a moment in my life where I wanted to again try different things, but also push myself and push the envelopes of what I thought was possible for me. And one of the things that was on my bucket list was, going Toastmasters. You've heard of Toastmasters, yeah?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to do Toastmasters, but then I realized that Toastmasters, you go up, you do a speech, and even if no one finds it engaging or interesting, people will always clap at the end. But I realized comedy is a bit harder in the sense that if you go up and you tell a joke and no one laughs, the failure or the perceived failure is there, like right there staring in front of you. And the only reason why I picked comedy over Toastmasters. It was a form of public speaking, and I knew if I did bad, I would face the failure myself.
That's really interesting, because I think as a standard, I mean, again, it's arguably because obviously I still like keep on, going to do comedy regardless of the times when gigs don't go so well, or even when
Mm,
jokes don't go so well. I feel like if I still believe in the said joke, I will still do it again. But it's a
mm,
very interesting approach that you are like, hey, I have a choice between something somehow hard, which is obviously public speaking as it is,
mm,
but then I am actually going to elevate. Like I have the possibility of doing that, or I have the possibility of taking it to a next step where it's not only public speaking, but actually making jokes, which, like you said, it's so much easier to see whether you're doing well or not because
mm,
you can get the feedback
mm.
instantly. And yeah, it's quite interesting that you went for the harder
Harder
of
one,
the
yeah.
of the two.
I mean, yeah, yeah, man. But again, it's always about, perspective. And I've always realized that, you always get you get out of things what you put into it. And I do feel like doing stand-up comedy over public speaking or just Toastmasters, it's helped me a lot more with my confidence with my public speaking. And also I enjoy it a lot more than I feel like I would have enjoyed Toastmasters. So I don't regret it one bit.
Actually, that this is another thing that I was going to ask you about. You've just said now about how my God, I lost my train of thought. 1 second.
It's all right.
You were talking about you were talking about how you chose this over um Toastmaster because it you get more pleasure out of it and you don't oh yeah, the commitment that it takes. Now the thing is that
Mm.
obviously how do you manage to fit all in? Like, how do you
Well,
manage? By the way, because sorry, just to ask you as well. Sorry, before we do that, before you answer that question, like now that you've finished graduating, what do you do now?
so I work in medicine. I work as a doctor in a hospital.
In no near Manchester, you're.
That's right, yeah. So currently I'm in the A&E department.
Oh my God! You see now, how do you manage to do
Do
both?
all of it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there's a saying that, if you care about something, you will make time for it. But there is also another saying, which is that for everything you gain, you will also lose something. And for me to have to or be able to juggle comedy and also medicine, it's required a lot of planning ahead, but it has also required a lot of commitment. I mean, right now I'm working in A&E and I live at home and I'm commuting to and from work. And even though it's a 45-minute drive and each shift is 10 hours and sometimes I miss break and finish late, I still manage time to, get the comedy in. But I remember days near the start of my medical career when we had rotations. I was living away just a bit closer to work. And I remember cycling, I had to cycle into work because I didn't have that much money and I was still saving up and I was renting. And I made time for it, but it took a lot of sacrifice because I remember waking up, at like 6, trying to get a quick food in, and then cycling in from 7 so I could start work at 8. So I could work as quick as I can and potentially miss lunch just so I could finish everything on time and leave on time around 5 to cycle home by 5:45 to eat and then leave and then catch the train into the gig, just so I could sign in on time and get on stage on time so I could catch the train back home, get home by 10:15, eat, and then sleep at 11. Wake up again at 6, do it all the same way. So it is possible, but there have been moments and there still are days where it takes a lot out of you.
And I think you actually, you mentioned something that, like, once you've said it, I was like, yeah, it makes so much sense. The thing about like when you care for something, you fit it
Yeah,
in your time, and then
yeah.
how there are ways, and it sounds like once you're getting, or it sounds like you're getting value from both. So
Mm,
it sounds like it's worth trying, or like it's worth doing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, well, now, with the, again, like, is that, and again, excuse me for whether I have a good, I mean, I'm pretty sure you'll correct me in many ways, but was this like or did you have to do any sort of like practice while you were studying? Like, did you do any sort of, like almost like, I want to say, apprentice work? Or was it like once you study, you just study? And then once you finish studying medicine, you then start getting a job.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's your
So
first
I think
hands-on experience. Sorry, go on.
I hear you. I hear you. I think that depends on which uni you go to. The uni that I went to, UCL, for the first 2 years, it's purely med school in the sense that it's 9 to 5 of lectures. And then from then onwards, you get integrated clinical time. So you'll go into designated hospitals and you'll have designated rotations. And while you're studying, you go in and you see, see how surgeons do their thing, or see how medics do their thing, or see how obs and gynae do their thing. So they slowly integrate you into it. And I know for some other unis, they do that from you from the first year. But for UCL, they made us do pure lectures, 9 to 5, made us pass exams, and then and only then could we go into hospitals. So in a way, I think that, the whole apprenticeship thing was interwoven into the course. But as soon as I finished my course, they just chucked me onto a ward, and I was suddenly a raw graduate in charge of what, like 14, 16 people in 2 bays. So it's a huge learning curve, but you get used to it.
Oh my God, what did that feel like?
Dude, I was so scared, man. You have no idea. 6 years of medical school, I felt like I knew everything. And then I just walked onto my first shift, my first work. And they're like, all right, so you are now in charge of that bay with 8 people who are unwell, and this bay with 8 people who are unwell. And the best thing you can do is make sure they get a bit better to being discharged. And the worst thing you can do is just make sure they stay as ill as they are. Anything worse is a failure. And I was so scared, Levy. You have no idea.
How did you go? Like, as far as you can talk about it, but just
Mm.
like out of curiosity, how did you manage to then, go through the day?
I don't know, man. I think I just took every single patient as it came. And it was, yeah. I don't know. I think I've blocked a lot of it out. I'd like to think I've done well because I'm still here. But yeah,
Well, yeah,
the
that's
first
also true.
The first week, the first 2 weeks, it's just you're just a raw conscript, and you're in the middle of a war zone, and you just have to figure out how to pull the trigger and aim, and that is it. And it's a sink or swim attitude. That's what it is. You just got to suck it up and say, "Listen, it is what it is. I could either cry or I could just get on with it and face it and see what happens."
And now another question based on something that you said earlier, which
Mm,
is about you do 2 years. So again, actually, it's based on more things that you said earlier, which is you liked science, you wanted to combine being like being around people, but also with combined with the things that you enjoyed at school, and then you're
mm,
doing the first 2 years in medicine school at UCL in with no like again just as like theory, right?
mm,
But then
mm.
was it what you expected when you started getting those like again work integrated, or was something that you did not imagine? Or like was it something that it was like very different from what you expected to be the
I
job of a
see.
doctor to be like?
Yeah, no, completely different.
No
And I
way.
think you have no idea, man. Being a medical school, being, in medical school, Levy, and going onto a placement and saying, yes, I'm a fourth year medical student. I'm here to learn. And going onto a ward and saying, hello, I'm your doctor for the day. Two completely different stratospheres. Like the pressure on your shoulders. And yeah, it's completely different. I mean, it's a lot more freedom being a med student, and I remember having so much free time to spend time with family, friends, training. I did so many random sports, and then just the whole pressure of being a doctor and having to deal with shit. It's completely different. Nothing will prepare any medical student from being a final year to being a doctor in day one.
Wow. And then when did you because
So I graduated in 2022.
2022. So that's like about what, 2 years in?
Yeah, 2 and a bit years ago.
Wow. And then what was it then like when you, was it a big difference, I guess, from, because obviously you were talking about the pressure of, still being a student while working, there is still not as much pressure as when you are like when that's actually your job, when you're like in charge and you're like
Mm.
hired for the job. But then what was it like to then, I don't know, like I guess move, although you are like a northern, kid,
Yeah.
but then obviously being down here just to study, but then was it like a big difference from what you've seen, I guess, in hospitals or like from, you know, treating or like even working with people down here from what it's like to be in Manchester
Not
or like
really,
up
no.
north, basically?
Well, I can't really say much of a difference because I haven't obviously worked in London or somewhere in the south to have that comparison. But I have, on the whole, I don't know about you, but I've noticed that people in, well, at least comedy-wise, that's how I'll extrapolate. The comedy people in Manchester tend to be a bit more friendlier than the comedy people in London. I don't know if you have that same perception. But maybe I can extrapolate that to more people in general or people at work. I've just found that because I remember doing comedy in London and, people just kept, tended to, stay pretty much to themselves and with their own respective groups. And to be fair, when you have when you have a, range that's so huge like London, it does make sense. But Manchester, if you've been up here as you have done, it seems a lot more, closely knit.
Yeah, I think that's I kind of feel like, yeah, that goes without saying. I also feel like it's the thing is it's not even I personally think it's not necessarily like even a north and
Mm,
south thing, because I've been like southern of London.
mm,
I've been southern, like south from London, and I've noticed that there are huge differences between
really?
or like again like people are, I feel like in London everyone's just kind of like quick, like unless you have something important to say,
Shut
don't
up.
bother me sort of attitude, while up north you kind of, or like again anywhere else, look, which I do agree with you, I feel like it's a combination of the amount of, again, different
Mm,
people.
mhm.
Although I remember reading that this thing about, I think Manchester being the city with like the most spoken languages in the UK, but
Yeah, yeah.
I still feel like London it's much more like diverse.
Yes, for sure, man.
In Manchester, I almost felt like, yeah, okay, like so for example, there are Romanian people. It's kind of like, okay, they are just somewhere. While in here, I don't know, I go in some places of some parts of London, and you only speak Romanian.
Yes, yes. Or
That's the
Bengali,
because like,
yeah.
yeah, because like that's how I found it. Where I was like, yeah, okay, fine, I see your point. However, in Manchester, you have like a Romanian shop, and then you speak with the people in the shop, and then someone's Romanian there. While
Yeah.
in here, again, you have a barber next to a shop, next to a like nails
Yeah, yeah,
salon,
yeah.
next to a physiotherapist, next to a restaurant, next to a whatever. So you literally go on this street, and you're almost like, is this Romania?
Is this Romania?
Yeah, so that's why I feel like it's very they are very different places,
For
and
sure.
yeah, I see your point.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
there's no shade to people in London, because I feel like people in London are lovely, and also I kind of get it. I feel like I've never felt more frustrated than
But
with the
are you
frustrations that I get
fine?
in
Are
London.
you a Londoner now?
No, I wouldn't say that, but it's just the fact that I feel like also the expectations being higher.
That's true.
Because like I, for example, I remember in Manchester not knowing whether the bus is gonna come or not, and you'd
Yeah.
kind of be like, it's annoying, but it's fine. It's understandable. It's been like this forever.
Yeah.
While in London, if the bus is late 2 minutes, I'll be like, oh my God, this is the most disgusting thing in the world. How is this possible?
It's
We live in
riot.
2024. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So look, I can see how, yeah, my perception has somehow changed, or especially now when I go like outside. I did a gig, and I don't know how much you managed to go away from Manchester. I remember you
Mhm.
saying that you're driving. I don't drive, right?
Fine.
So I went outside of London and I had to take the bus from the train station. And obviously the bus didn't have any like live updates. You know, it was
Yeah.
like a town south of Oxford.
Okay.
And I just remember thinking, oh my God, am I going like back in the past? While 2 years ago, that was just like the normal thing, you
The
know?
standard. Yeah,
And
exactly, man.
it still is. It's just the way it is, the way everything else operates. But
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like things change. That's all I'm trying to say.
That.
Look, coming back to you. So yeah, actually, you know that's a question for you now. How much obviously you were saying that time management and like planning in
Mm.
advance is an important thing for you, or obviously to keep you on track, you know, with everything that you want to do. But then, yeah, when what does like do you get to travel around with doing shows, or do you tend to stay more local while you still get your feet on the ground with again with the A&E job?
So most of my shows are essentially local in and around the Manchester scene. Very rarely do I leave Manchester, only because of the logistics. You know, if I'm working
Yeah,
four or five shifts and they're on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, Sundays, and I only have Wednesday that's free, I'd rather just go to Manchester and even go to like a 10-minute spot in Manchester where people know me and I know them, than have to drive to Liverpool, do the show there, drive back. It's more of a logistics thing for me, to be
yeah.
completely honest with you.
It makes sense, and I feel like it goes back to what you were saying earlier, where you still get value out of it, and it's still enjoyable. It's a
Mm,
price worth taking, and
yes.
I feel like the anxiety, and again, if you always manage to like drive now, or do you still sometimes have to rely on like trains and other public transport
So
if you were to gig further away?
if I was to get further away, honestly, I would just take the train there and back. I think yes, it's a bit expensive, or train or bus, but at least then I can, use that time on the train or on the bus to write my material or memorize. I think driving 40 minutes to and from work, every time I work, which is at least 4 times a week, it's enough for me. It really is. So I don't mind, the occasional pilgrimage via public transport.
Nice. And then talking about how you get to write. So when do you what sort of comedy do you like to do? Again, you don't have to
Yeah.
go wildly specific, keep the what do you call it? Make people wonder. But just out of curiosity, like how would you define if someone asks you how do you define your comedy style? Yeah, what's that like?
So I like storytelling, but I also like discussing concepts and being true to myself. For me, comedy is it's an art, it's a release, but it's also an expression of truth. Obviously, it's not the complete truth. It can be slightly fabricated, it can be based on inspiration. The punchline is pretty much always heavily edited. I think we laugh when we hear a joke because it either triggers a primal part of us and we recognize it as, oh yeah, that's so true, or it triggers a truth that we don't want to accept, so we laugh it off for, haha, yeah, fair enough. And when I go on stage, I want to talk about things that I believe in or things that I've noticed, observed, either about myself, about the society, about life from, work, friends, family. I want to when I do my comedy, I want the room to feel as if, we're just having a conversation, just like a bunch of friends around the table at a pub. That's the sort of feeling I really try and, evoke when I go on stage.
Interesting. And is this like your approach as well? I guess when you're at work, because you were talking about how you do enjoy being around people, and that's something that you took into consideration even when you signed up when you went for medicine school.
Mm,
But then, yeah, do you manage to do that as well at work now, or is basically comedy the platform where you actually manage to be yourself to that like further extent where you can just be even more relaxed and you're like
yeah.
have more relaxed conversations and be more casual?
No, I hear you. I try to do it at work. People are, apparently, according to the other doctors, when nurses try and describe me as the guy who did the prescription or saw that patient or whatever, they describe me as the small, smiley doctor. And I like that description. you know. And there are shifts where I just come into work at 1 p.m. and then the senior doctors are like, "How are you?" And I say I'm very good, and they're always like, "You are quite optimistic." And I think it's very easy, especially when you work in A&E, to come onto a shift and there's an 8 hour wait and two people who are very unwell and the entire department's on fire. And I think it's very easy to come into that environment and absorb that energy. But my mentality has always been if I always go into work and I'm always sad to be work at the start, and then I'm always happier and happier as the shift goes on to the point where I'm very happy near the end. Then that means over a week I'm going to be unhappy at least 4 times. And that's not really acceptable to me for someone who sees people die on a regular basis. So, as I really do try and be as chilled as I can be, as you can be for an A&E department.
Of course, you said such a an interesting and like actually I think beautiful thing there. Where if you were to then take the only the bad energy,
Mm,
around you, or the I guess sadness of emotions from
mm.
all the emotions that you can feel, that would be at least like you said 4 days of your. And
Yeah,
not even
man.
4 days. That was like what 40 hours, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 40 hours a week when you'd just be miserable or sad,
Exactly.
angry, etc. And then
Exactly.
that's a very cool analogy. And then were you always like this? Were you always like, I guess, like this grounded, or like how did you become uh this kind of, I guess, person?
I think the more I've done this job, the more grounded I've become. I think at the start, I was a lot more anxious. I was a lot more stressed, a lot more worried. And I think a part of it was because, of course, whenever you go into a new shift or a new job, a new role, you don't know things. You're not as competent as you would like to be. And I certainly wasn't as
Mm.
competent as I would have liked to have been. And I'm sure that would have affected things. But a lot of it is just, growing up and maturing and just trying to be more grateful for what you have. And the more shit I see in A&E, the more grateful I am. Like every single time, something inconvenient happens to me, my default right now is, oh well, at least my mum or my dad, at least they haven't died today. I think that's my default. And it just helps me ground myself and just realize, it is what it is. We'll move on.
It's although you've had a very interesting analogy, but I'm actually very curious about like what did your parents think when you told them that you're doing comedy?
They they very supportive, genuinely.
Nice.
I do have Asian parents, but they're very I think their mentality has been as soon as you turn 18, you're old enough, you make your own decisions. And they don't really care that much about my, comedy aspirations in the sense that they're not always talking about it. But I come home late and my mum's like, "Oh, I've got food ready for you." Or sometimes I come home late and my mum messages me before she goes to sleep and she's like, "Where are you? Are you on the tram back?" And yeah, they've always been the silent supporters, and that's something, you can't replace with money or time.
That's amazing. And then are they like, or if you have any siblings, is anyone else, I guess, like exploring the like passion, creative passions, or are you the only person in the family who
No, I
is,
got a sister, man.
using this?
I got a very sweet sister. She's currently studying to be a aeronautical engineer,
Oh my
also up
God.
in the north. And she does dancing in her spare time. I used to be a bit of a dancer myself before I hung up the boots.
No way.
Yeah, man. First year, second year of med school, they were like, inter-university dance competitions. I used to take part. It was a good way for me to express my creative talent and
What kind
be.
of dance?
So Bollywood, hip hop were two of the main ones that I used to do, and I used to have a good time.
No way.
Yeah, man. I got some videos. I'll send you
What?
some videos.
Yes, please. That's amazing. I don't know, that would be really cool to, to think like, oh, that's my doctor.
Yeah,
This guy doing those like, um,
guys,
yeah, this guy is my doctor.
just bragging about me to your friends. This is my GP. What does your GP do?
Well, sorry.
I was just saying, you're gonna brag about me to your friends, like, yeah, this is my GP. What does your GP do?
Yeah, well, this is well. Funnily enough, I feel like my current GP is this. Like I think she's German, but again, I'm assuming
Sure,
based on her accent and her name.
sure.
And I find her very interesting. Although
Okay.
again, we've never spoke about her, but I think that's why because of my like health condition last year, and like even at the moment, and like having to speak with my GP on like a more regular basis.
Mm,
I get to obviously speak with her more often,
mm.
and then yeah, we've never talked about her, but I find her quite interesting, just
Okay.
from the I don't know, just like the things she does, and also like I feel yeah, I like her style a lot. I don't know why. Again, besides of like how are you, and maybe with her, I try to be like relatable, and she had a cup of coffee
Okay.
one day, and I was like, I like, I was like, Greg's, yeah, it's not a bad, coffee, and she was like, yeah, it's one across the road, and I was like, yeah, I'm aware that I live in the
I'm
area,
aware.
and that was pretty much the that's pretty much like the chit chat that we did,
Fine, fine.
but. The thing is now that when you're obviously you studied, and I'm curious, like what is your, or like what was it like then for you studying about like mental health, or what's, I guess, even your like view on it, or and then as well, obviously being as someone like with BPD, what's it like
Mm.
learning about it, if you
So,
have, if you've been, yeah.
of course, of course. So I think mental health is one of those areas that not enough research has been put into. So a lot of the things that we talk about in med school is still very much outdated models that really do need updating. I think there's a clear distinction between there needs to be a clear delineation between certain mental health conditions that you can control and certain mental health conditions that you can't really control. And obviously, based on that, that's how you get the formation of different management strategies. For example, people with anxiety or depression, when you go to the GP, they'll just put you on pills and they refer you for, a psychiatrist or a therapist, and the waiting list is 6 to 8 months. But they don't really talk about the lifestyle factors. They don't really talk about, the underlying. Pills are good, but it's just a plaster on a wound. And sometimes you have to talk through the wound and sew it up and let it scab out. But of course, you have other mental health conditions like bipolar. You have things like, schizophrenia. Those, you can't really talk much about lifestyle factors then. You do really have to talk about the pharmaceuticals and trying your best to regulate the dysregulation of chemicals in the brain. So I think mental health in and of itself as an umbrella, I think it needs a lot more attention, a lot more research. And I really don't think we care or we put that much emphasis into it in medical school. And I think a part of it is because, as doctors, we're trained to fix what we can and let the patients do the rest by themselves. And the normal mentality or the branches, say if I'm in A&E and someone comes in with a, self-harm wound and, serious mental health issues, the best thing I can do is just stitch them up and then refer them for the crisis team or the, psych liaison team. There's not really much I can do to manage their mental health in and of
Hmm.
itself there and then, if that makes sense. And for example,
It does make sense.
patients on the ward, say you've come in with, say you've have some anxiety or depression and then you've cut yourself and then you've developed cellulitis, infection of the skin. You come onto the ward and have IV antibiotics. The criteria for discharge would be when you don't require IV antibiotics, when we can let you go home with oral antibiotics. The criteria for discharge is not when we fix the underlying cause, which is your mental health issue. Which is why I think it's one of the main issues why mental health doesn't really have that much of a focus, because it's not, not like a heart attack which we fix, or it's not a stroke which we can control in the manage with physiotherapy. It requires a lot more efforts, and the service that we have, especially in the UK, is not well equipped to deal with it. And that's, I think that's the unfortunate reality.
That's interesting. Well, one of the things that you were saying, and it's really interesting, obviously, about like the underlying like how
mm,
do you I guess attack the, and I'm sorry for not using
mm,
like a better word, but I think yeah, like when you attack the main issue, again you're still treating it as okay, the problem in here it's say a wound, but then you you can't really do more than that, right? Because
mm,
again
mm,
that's like the sounds of it, because you're saying, you know, you can't, you have a structure. So then like I guess like what's it like for you, or like what was it like for you, especially as a young doctor, someone who's only done who's only been again like out of the med school for the 2 years. What was it like for you to, you know, almost, I guess, get your head around it, or like has it had, did it take any tool on you when you know when you're the point of, you know, like I feel like things can be done better, like I feel like we need to do better, but then but yet I can't do, obviously I can't do it by myself and I can't do it right now.
mm.
How do you manage to then look after yourself, or when thoughts as such occur, if they have occurred?
Well, I think it's just about looking at all the pieces in the chessboard and doing the best you can, playing the best move possible. It doesn't mean you're going to win the game. It just means you've done the best you can. And yeah, there have always been days where I felt like I haven't done enough, but there are also many days where I felt like I've given everything into this shift, genuinely everything I possibly could for the last 10 hours into this shift. And I think especially it's very, very easy to be overwhelmed by the negative thoughts. And there's a study that says that, for example, in terms of an impression someone makes on you, if someone makes a bad impression on you, they'll have to make 8 good impressions on you in order to counteract that. And I think it's same for the impressions you have of yourself. If you have one bad impression of yourself to yourself, you need to have 8 positive impressions or 8 positive thoughts, positive ideas about yourself in order to counteract that and keep the positive voice louder than the negative. So I think that's always been my mentality. Whenever it just gets dark, you always think about the good times and you think about what you have and what you've achieved and what you've done. And most of the times it is good enough to just keep the ship floating.
And do you ever, or like, is there such a thing as, like, whenever you feel like things can, and again, not like individually, but like
Mm,
systematically be done better, do you
mm,
have I guess, do you have like the option to offer this like feedback to people who are, say, above you, like in charge of the systems, or like do you have those opportunities where you're like, hey, this feels like is not
mm,
necessarily, like it hasn't been updated in a while,
mm.
can someone have a look at it, or is it kind of something that you just notice and you just have to accept as it is?
Honestly, I think it's something that I personally notice and I personally accept, but that's only
Mm,
because I try not to care too much about work. And I know it sounds a bit too cold-hearted, but I realize that, I have a lot more outside of work, and a lot more of the stresses I have in work are stresses that I am already voluntarily, shouldering. And to be honest, when you're going to work and there are these small computer failures or hospitals not having a electronic system, so all the paper notes keep going missing, you want to keep, talking about those again and again. But when you go into work and your main priority is trying to fix that grandma who's coming in with a broken hip, or trying to manage this guy who's coming in with a heart attack, you don't care about the small things anymore. So
mm.
that doesn't mean they don't matter. It just means it's like decision fatigue, right? The number of decisions you have to make with a clear crystal mind is already limited, and you have a finite amount of willpower. So you just have to direct it in the most viable channels possible.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think even, you know, on the point that you were saying earlier about how sometimes it might sound like it's cold-hearted, or
Mm,
unfortunately, I feel like with, again, especially with medicine, it sounds and it feels like from the outside as a job that almost require, I mean, I think as many other jobs, but especially a job that requires you to be as rational as possible, although
mm,
sometimes it feels very difficult, because, you know, I think again, I can only imagine from, my previous like work experience where I fix, like computers and electronic devices. And, if something goes wrong, if I could, at times go like, oh my God, I'm heartbroken that I can't save this like person's lifetime, like of like pictures or whatever they
Mm.
didn't get to save up in time before things went bust. And, I can't, well, yeah, I feel like the emotions might overtake,
Mm.
but ultimately I have to get myself in the position where I'm like, hey, like what is it factually that I can and cannot do? How do I, just transfer across while also being as empathetic as possible, which I think it's,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
which makes a lot of sense. So then, when we were talking about yeah, like living with BPD, and also like obviously because I've got diagnosed with BPD almost 2 years ago now. And then you were talking about like the experience of working with mental health in A&E, but then obviously now being a comedian, or
Mm.
you're meeting even more like, I guess, neurodivergent people, people who have perhaps possibly, okay, obviously I'm not saying every comedian, but a big
Okay.
amount of comedians, or maybe I'd say probably, and again, I might be wrong, but I imagine there is a bigger amount of comedians that you interact with, or people in the comedy scene that you interact with,
Yeah.
that are struggling with their thoughts. At least, and then they have more like emotional, they have a more emotional mind rather
Mm.
than the people that you'd see struggling with their mental health in a hospital.
Yeah.
I might be wrong, so please correct me if I am. But what's that like? Like, do you ever notice any, I don't know, traits or anything? Like, do you ever kind of take the hospital work to the other work, which is comedy, with
No,
you, and you're like,
no, never. I've realized it. You're right in the sense that comedy does attract a specific subset of people. I think you ever notice how when you try and make a joke or you try and talk about something, it's never in a positive light. In the sense that there is there is never funny in the happy or in the good, but there is always funny to be found in the bad, you know? Like every single joke, every single setup, every single concept it's never about, oh yeah, I went to work and and I had this really good sandwich. It's always about, oh, I went to work and he's a bitch and my sandwich got spoiled. I realized for a lot of people, comedy is a way for them to come to terms with life, come to terms with all the darkness in life. Like no one when people talk about their relationships on stage, it's never the good aspects. When people talk about their love life, it's never how, they get laid so much. It's always about how they're single. When people talk about work, it's never about the good things. It's always about, the like how shit work is. I think comedy does attract a lot of a specific subtype of people, people who are struggling, who are in need of a platform to just release their tensions in a funny and comedic manner. And maybe there is an overlap between those who are struggling and those who are either neurodivergent or anxious or depressed or have mental health problems that are undiagnosed. But I do think that I've never linked them both, to be honest with you. Every single person I've met through comedy, they've just been another guy or another girl with a lot of shit on their plate, and we're just all gonna go on stage and talk about it for 5 minutes, and that's that.
huh, interesting. Because I think at the I've noticed now that, and I think I was I want to say I was I made this mistake. I think once I got diagnosed with
Mm,
BPD, when I would almost go like, if I hear someone like struggling with their mental health, I'd be like,
mm.
is it BPD? Or like I would almost try to like diagnose. Like I feel like even sometimes now where I speak with people and they're like, hey, I don't know, I might have BPD, and I'm like, no, you don't. Obviously
Okay.
I don't say it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But you're
you
thinking,
know.
yeah.
Yeah, but I think it, but I'm like, because you almost like become an
Mm.
expert. Well, I become an expert as quote unquote, yeah.
No,
So
I
then
know what you're
what?
talking about, man.
Obviously now with you technically being at least like being more of an expert than an individual with a different day job.
Yeah,
How do you do you ever get this thing where you're like like it's obviously, and it I now I'm using it for like a comedic purpose, but where you go like, hey, I bet this person might be on the spectrum, and it's just because again someone does something that to someone else looks odd, although
yeah,
that's not the case.
yeah,
But then
yeah, yeah.
do you ever feel like you get in that situation, or if you do, do you notice these thoughts, or is it something that doesn't occur to you?
No, I mean, I'd be lying if I said I don't notice the thoughts. I do, you know. I mean, even at work, I'm supposed to, my job is to be very observant. And as a result, that's taught me a lot in terms of being able to read people and understand people.
Mm.
So I do notice it, but obviously I don't go out my way to say it or diagnose people on in an open mic. That's just very unprofessional. And I think it just ruins someone's night as well.
For sure. And actually that's a very interesting thing that you said now, where you're like, you have to be more observant. Have you
Mm,
noticed that does this or has this changed in any way the way you, I guess, treat, your set, where you say you go on stage and you might, do you feel like you sometimes observe quicker whether a bit is going to work or not, or like, whether you have to shift directions throughout the set or anything like this? Have you basically, are those skills transferable?
for sure. Dude, the number of times I've gone on stage and I've said a joke and halfway through the setup I'm thinking to myself, oh, this isn't gonna go well. Like you can just read the crowd. You can just see in their eyes. But you still go through with it and you come back again stronger. I definitely can read the crowd a lot better now. I think the next skill for me is knowing how to change and manipulate the crowd so they're a lot more receptive of my material.
Interesting. No, that's like such a battle for so many people,
Mm,
or like again comedians, when I say people in this circumstance, where to like actually gauge what the audience wants, or whether things
yeah.
are going well or not. And it's something that I think it's still taking me again. Like I've been doing it for just over 3 years, and I
Mm,
still feel like I'm not obviously I'm nowhere near doing an or like mastering it. I'd like to think I'm mediocre to good,
absolutely.
but the thing is that it sounds amazing that you've managed to, I guess, it sounds like at times you're just able to, like, again, you got not this out of the way, because again I feel like it's always work in progress, but you
Yes.
kind of, you manage to acknowledge it, or you at least, yeah, you manage to be aware of this much quicker,
Yeah, yeah.
given
But
the
you're
amount
right.
of time you've done comedy. Yeah.
It's always a work in progress, man. And it's always just skills you're trying to develop further.
But and well, I was going to ask you now, where do people? Also, sorry, before I do ask you, where do people find, like, stay in touch with you, or like find your work? Obviously, not the GP work, because I'm sure.
Okay.
But
Just come into A&E.
yeah, you'd have just like loads of people showing up at the A&E, going like, "Oh, we want to go and see Dev specifically." We drove all the way from whatever other
London.
part of UK. But I was going to ask you, do you talk, like, because obviously you talked about like your storytelling is a big part of your
Hmm.
way of doing comedy, observations as well. Do you talk during, like, do you address the fact that you work as a doctor,
I do, yeah.
or interesting?
Sometimes I get announced as it. Otherwise, I do bring it up in the middle of my set. It's a part of who I am. It's a part of my story.
Of course, yeah. But that's why I was just curious whether you managed to get to bring it in, because again, I think it's super interesting, and like you said, I think especially storytelling and
Yeah.
observational, you
And it
almost
provides me with a
can't
really
run
good.
out. Sorry, please go on.
I was just about to say it provides me with, a really good way to express myself in the sense that yes, I'm a doctor and yes, I'm doing this, but I'm still here doing comedy and it's a different viewpoint that really I feel helps my story.
Yes, of course. And then again, I was going to say that, with being a doctor and being like an observational comic and a storyteller, you almost, I think it's even easier than it would be for someone else to not have to worry about running out of stories to tell or observations to make, because is, again, your experiences are so much more different.
All day.
Yeah. But okay, so now, Dev, yeah, where can people see your work?
So
Like, where are you most active socially, basically? Social
so
media wise, or not
socially,
socially?
socially is mostly just Instagram. I've got Instagram. My Instagram is at dev dash comedy. I've also got a TikTok. It's dev dash underscore comedy. So you can definitely check me out on all of those things. I post fairly regularly. Hopefully, I'll be doing some more gigs in and around, a bit further off from Manchester next. Well, throughout 2025. So it'd be good to have some of, obviously you, but also some of your supporters come down and check out my shows.
Perfect. And well, thank you so much for taking. Oh, also, do you like do like a Substack or anything like that, or like do you basically, I don't know, like almost as if, like, do you blog as well, or in the way
So
of
I
journaling, or is
actually
it
do.
just through comedy?
No, no, I do have a Substack, but I haven't used it in so long, Levy. I believe it's just another medic. That's what I had on my Substack, but I haven't posted for the last, I'd say, 3 years. But now that you've mentioned it, I might make a post or two.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, just I guess put it on put it on your link tree or something like this on Instagram, so people can read it out, because I'm sure there are so many things that people would find super. Because I know I sometimes get lost on like Reddit reading about like things that happened in the ER in like America and stuff like this. So
Yeah,
again, I'm sure people would love to hear some of the stories.
absolutely.
Look, it's been such a pleasure spending the hour with you, Dev, and I appreciate you for taking the time, and obviously I appreciate you for the work you're doing, both as a comic and as a doctor, and I'm looking forward to catching up in person sometime in the future. So thank you so much,
Absolutely.
brother.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having this, man. I genuinely think it's a beautiful project you've got going on, and I really do look forward to everyone else you have coming on. And again, you're right, man. It'd be nice to see you up. Next time you're up north, definitely send me a message, all right?
I'll let you know. I hopefully will be at the well. I might. Yeah, I'm trying, and hopefully will be before the spring 2025.
Whatever
So
works, man.
we'll stay in touch.
I'll see you soon.
Okay, see you soon, brother. Take care. Cool. Well, sorry for the mishap at the beginning. I don't know what happened there. I feel like there was at some point our voices were like almost crossed over, but then it seems to have timed better throughout the podcast. Um, I don't know why that happened, or what's up with that, but I'll do my research and we'll get to do it better. Hopefully, it won't happen again. But hey, I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I feel like it was pretty good. And yeah, make sure you check out Dev's socials. And I think that's it from me. So yeah, from me, Pikal and Sarma. Until next week. Well, couple of weeks from now. Stay skillful. Bye.